2. Go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Ames. I'm the director and founder of Defend Life. Thank you for being with us here at beautiful St. James Catholic Church here on the feast day, believe it or not, of St. James the Greater. Here it is in Charlestown, West Virginia, probably the most gorgeous, most beautiful Catholic church in all of West Virginia, perhaps the most beautiful church, parish church, in West Virginia or Pennsylvania or Maryland. You really should come and visit it sometime when you're here. But right now we're going to have a wonderful talk. It's going to be by Larry Grayson, Dr. Larry Grayson, who has his PhD, who's a visiting scholar at Catholic University of America in the School of Philosophy, who's the former president of several national engineering organizations, and who's done it all. He's also in charge of pro-life for the Maryland Knights of Columbus. And he's going to be telling us a little bit about what led up to this tragic Roe versus Wade decision back in January of 1973. Please welcome Dr. Larry Grayson.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. I appreciate the invitation, and even more so, I appreciate the opportunity to be with the group here this afternoon. It's really an honor for me to be able to be with you. The prayer warriors are going to go out and battle for pro-life for this coming week. And I say battle because it really is a war. America's at war. Our nation is at war. And it's not a war fought with guns and bombs and weapons of mass destruction, trying to get territorial wealth. No, it's a cultural war. It's a war that's trying to capture the conscience of the nation. It's being fought in our courts, in our schools, in our universities, in our social media, in the various entertainment outlets and news media. It's being fought all over, and it's being fought with laws and litigation and social pressure. It's really a war between good and evil. It's a war pitting militant secularism in this country against Christianity. And you're going to be on the front lines. You are on the front lines, and I appreciate that very much. So I'm very honored to have this opportunity to spend it with you before you go out. You know, America right now has great cultural problems. We look around, we see that pornography is $1 billion industry. Abortion is rampant. There's a great deal of work going on to make homosexuality a very normal kind of activity. We know that marriage between any two individuals is legal throughout the nation. That there's a great deal of movement to make euthanasia and assisted suicide legal and acceptable. In fact, in Maryland, the last two sessions of the Assembly, there have been bills that have gone forward but have not passed, thank God. But it's a war in so many different fronts that's taking place. But this country, a country that's founded on a government that focuses on the people, for the people, and by the people, where people are in charge, you really need people who have virtue and morality that they're going to make the right decisions. And if you need virtue, you need religion. Religion is what structures the virtue. It was very well put by John Adams very early in our history when he said that our Constitution was created only for a moral and religious people. It is totally inadequate for a government of any other kind. Now, when our fathers, the founding fathers of this nation, looked at the nation and began to develop it, they weren't very concerned about religion warping the values of the people. They were much more concerned about the government, a totalitarian government, using religion to capture the people and to rule the people. And so when they developed the Constitution, they also established a Bill of Rights, 10 amendments, The first of those amendments you're very familiar with. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Two different clauses in it. The government is not going to create any state religion, and it's not going to prohibit the people from exercising the religion that they'd like to do. They have the freedom to exercise their religion. And that's been a very, very fortunate and a very productive piece for the country. Over the 2 centuries and plus that this country has been in existence, there's been a very close relationship, a symbiotic relationship between religion and the state. Religion has formed the people, it's formed their values, their morals, their outlook, so they can rule themselves, provide the morality that's necessary in the government. The government, on the other hand, has established a situation, an environment in which the churches and the religions can begin to do their mission, to go out and teach and evangelize in their respective sects. And it's worked extremely well for most of the history of this country. Until really just after World War II, when things began to change. After World War II, there was a beginning to come in, a series of feelings that we have to begin to put a damper on religion. And it occurred very slowly. In 1947, there was a case up in New Jersey. New Jersey is a state that's composed of a lot of very small towns, and the towns provided transportation, basically, for the students to get to school. We have school buses today all over the country, and it was so in New Jersey at the time, except the towns allowed students to be picked up and taken to school, no matter what school they went to, whether it was public or private or religious. So they drove all the students to the schools. And then in 1947, one father said, "No, that's not right. Once we drive with taxpayer money a bus to take a student to a Catholic school or a religious school of some sort, now we're using taxpayer money to support religion, and that's not right." Well, the court, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, that case, and the Supreme Court did rule that it was unconstitutional. Now, that particular case, Everson versus Board of Education, is a very key case in the history of this country, because in it, the decision for the majority was written by a Supreme Court justice named Hugo Black. And in writing his decision, he went back and picked out a phrase in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1802 to a group of Baptists up in Connecticut, in Danbury, Connecticut. And at that time, Danbury, Connecticut was primarily controlled by the Congregationalists. And the Baptists were very concerned that they might get a lot of restrictions on their practice of religion. And so they wrote to Jefferson at that time, who was president, and he wrote back and said, no, don't be concerned. There's a wall of separation, as he said, between the state and the religion. And now he was using it to say, the government will not impose a religion on you. So he was using that particular clause. You have the right to free exercise. Well, that particular phrase has been used again and again in court case after court case against religion, except in the opposite way. And Hugo Black, in the decision of the court at that time, used it the other way. And that is that government will not establish a religion, so that we cannot use religious money, or state money rather, to support their religion in any way. So they took the phrase that Jefferson had and turned it on its head, basically, and used it just the opposite way it was established. And that was really a start for imposition of constraints on religion. The following year, in 1948, there was another case. For a good number of decades, one of the things that took place is that the public schools had a system called release time, and that students who wanted to learn about their religion, this could be Catholic, could be Protestant of any sort, Jewish religion, and students of all these sects participated, could get an hour off a week to go to a church or a location of the choosing of their religion and learn something from somebody in there, from a priest, from a pastor, from a rabbi, about their religion. The case was brought to the Supreme Court. It was deemed unconstitutional, even though it was a widespread piece with about 1.5 million students participating across the country, and it was declared unconstitutional. It was out. In 1962, in Long Island, New Hyde Park, Long Island, New York, the Board of Regents of New York had proposed a prayer, and it was said in the schools before school started. A very, very non-denominational prayer. It read, "Almighty God, we recognize our dependence on you, and we beg your blessings on us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. Amen." All it did was recognize the existence of God. Again, it went to the Supreme Court, declared unconstitutional, and prayer in the schools was ruled out. The following year, again, there was another case. One of the things that was used in the public schools, dating back to the earliest colonies, long before there was a country in this of the United States. The schools used the Bible and biblical stories to teach lessons about morality and virtue and how to live your life. Well, a woman named Madeline Murray O'Hare, someone that Life magazine referred to as the most hated woman in America, an avowed atheist, brought suit. Again, the Supreme Court ruled it was unconstitutional, and so the use of the Bible to teach morality and virtue was ruled out. And it kept, those kind of cases continued. It wasn't an overall massive movement against religion, but it was really one after another after another. And each time that something came in, it was annoying, it was bothersome, it was tolerable. People didn't push back to a large extent. It was tolerable. We could live with that. But then there was another one, another restraint, and another restraint. It's very much, if you think about the tale of Gulliver's Travels, when Gulliver was asleep on the beach and all the Lilliputians came out and began to tie him with tiny little cords. The cords he could snap in a moment. But when he got hundreds and thousands of cords tying him down, the combined effect was too much. And that's what's happening with religious freedom in the country today. So we have to really fight against our religious freedom. And we see it in so many different ways. Religious freedom, to a large extent, is really at a tipping point in this country today. And if we don't right it, this country will become an atheistic country to a large extent. Religion will be driven out of the public square, it'll be driven out of the public consciousness, out of the policies that we affect. As Patrick Henry once said, when the people forget God, the tyrants form their chains. And that's what we have to be very, very much concerned about. Now, we can't fight every battle with equal strength across this. We have these battles, as I say, on abortion, on euthanasia, on assisted suicide, on religious freedom, on marriage, on homosexuality, and we can go on and on and on. But I think, and I'm convinced, that if we can win the abortion battle, other victories will follow. That's the key to what's going on. And that's why what you're doing, going out on the streets, is so very key. And the abortion battle is going to be won when people recognize that blob of flesh growing in a woman's womb is not some unwanted, irrelevant kind of growth that should be taken out, but it's really a living child. Oh, that's the woman's child. And when people recognize that, I think things are going to change to a large extent. And things are happening. Abortion in America is beginning to, the attitudes towards abortion are beginning to change. We're finding that right now about 53% of the people, according to the most recent polls that have been taken, would like to have restrictions on all or most of the abortions that are out there. It's only about 43% that want it the other way. And so there is that. Pro-life activism is increasing. Pro-abortion activism is decreasing, actually. And so there are changes that are taking place. I think we're beginning to get the tide in our way, and we're beginning to win the battle. But there can be no halfway. You've got to push it, and right now we're in a fortunate position that we want to move continually forward. So we have to fight this battle right to the bitter end. It's a battle for the hearts and minds of the people in this country. And a lot of what's going on is trying to distort what people think of what's happening with the child in the womb. Language is one of the big things. You know, we think of a child in that first trimester, and if they simply refer to that as a product of conception, then the reality of what's happening is hidden. If in that second trimester, when the abortionist goes in and tears that child apart, limb from limb, and you call it, well, simply a DNA or a dilation and evacuation procedure, the reality of abortion is hidden. If in the third trimester, when the abortionist goes in and tries to get that large child out, and has to crush the skull and pull it out in pieces, and they say, well, it's an intrauterine cranial decompression. Well, that's wonderful, but that hides the reality of what's taking place. And so we have to bring it to the fore. And fortunately, the advances we're having in science and technology, right now, the advances in neonatology, the advances with ultrasound, they're beginning to bring the reality to the front. That's why ultrasound is so important. When ultrasound comes in, you can see a baby in just the earliest stages and recognize that that child at 10 weeks has a certain form and it's already beginning to look human. That at 20 weeks, it feels pain. At 24 weeks or less, it can survive outside of the womb. I just read a piece last night of a little girl who just celebrated her first birthday, and she was delivered at 21 weeks. 21 weeks when she was delivered, but fine. She's leading a perfectly normal life right now. And the ultrasound is important because it shows the beauty of life. You can see the child living and moving and kicking and squirming. On the other side, the kind of things that you're going to be having, the signs that will be brought, that you'll be carrying on these various stops you have, show the opposite side. Those images of the victims are really important, because now they show what abortion really does. And you see that child battered and beaten and bleeding, butchered like a sheep. That's the reality of what's taking place. It's murder. And so it is important. And when you show those signs, when you're out there, there will be a lot of kickback and pushback from people, because those signs are disturbing. They jar the conscience. And the people who come up and say something to you or make some vile signs, their conscience is bothering them. maybe they or somebody they love has had an abortion, and now this is bringing the reality of what they did to the fore. But it's a good sign in many ways. Today, we're finding that abortion throughout the country the availability of abortion is changing. It's becoming much, much less. Many abortion doctors are giving up the practice. The older doctors are not being replaced by younger doctors. They don't want to face the reality of what's taking place. In 1991, there were about 2,176 clinics in the country that performed abortion, independent abortion facilities. 176. Today there are less than 500, and they're decreasing. So it's happening. Today, 90% of the counties in this country do not have a place where somebody can get an abortion. 90% are abortion clinic free. 7 states, including West Virginia, have only one abortion facility in the country, in the state. So things are changing, but we got to continue the push. We got to get it down to 0%, and it'll happen. Now, when you do go out and meet these people, it can be a little upsetting. None of us likes to face somebody who's so rabid about their ultra femininity or their feminism or sexuality or their gender rights or whatever else they're pushing right now. But it has to be done. And recognize that as you do so and you face this, it is to save a life. And that's the important part. Now, Christianity itself began in persecution. And for the entire history of Christianity, there have been numerous times where there have been great opposition and persecution of one sort or another. But as you're out there and facing these folks on the street, you're not in a life-threatening situation. You're in a very disconcerting situation, but not life-threatening. You know, there may be some boycotts, there may be some bad language, but there's no beheadings. You may see some lying that's out there. Some of the folks may face litigation of some sort, but you're not facing lions in the arena. There may be cursing, but there's no crucifixion. So the things that are changing, and you can do it. So I think it's very important that you got to be hopeful about this. Fortunately, we don't have to face a hard tyranny as people have in the past, or so many of the Christians in the Middle East today are facing, where they are being murdered and killed and under great duress, or even in this continent back in the 1920s and 30s, where the Christianity in Mexico was under siege. The Christians are being murdered right and left, and yet they could go before a firing squad and say, "Viva Cristo Rey," stay with their faith. So we're very fortunate in some ways. In many cases, we've seen worldwide outrage at mass killings. Things like the Holocaust. When the Holocaust was here and under the Nazi regimes, there was worldwide, justifiably so, outrage. When there were genocide movements in Rwanda or North Korea or China or under the Maoists, or you take a look at Stalinist Russia, where tens of millions of people were killed. There was worldwide outrage. Today in this country, since 1973, more than 60 million children have been killed in the womb. And there's no outrage. That's more than 3 times the combined number of people killed by Stalin and Hitler combined. Yet there's no outrage. Rather, there's a feeling that that's a woman's right. Let's support it with tax dollars. Let's provide free abortions. There's something that's totally wrong. But it's part of the culture. That's why we have this major cultural war going on. Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, as part of his very famous remarks, said we hear highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom under God. That should apply to those abortion victims. We should never forget those 60 million children who have been killed. And we should resolve that they're going to be atoned, and use that in our thinking about it. Now, things are shifting. We're seeing a great deal of movement. The so-called millennial generation, the generation before yours, the people who were born between 1980 and about 2000, have shown that they've got a great desire for life, and many of them have done wonderful things in the pro-life movement. Many of them have developed into the pro-life leaders of the nation today. Some of them are on Jack's board here. Kristen Hawkins. Kristen got involved in the pro-life activities as a sophomore in high school. She joined a pro-life club. She volunteered at a pro-life center, pregnancy center. In college, she did the same thing. A year after she graduated college, she was made the head of students of life in America. In the roughly 12 years that she's been heading it, she's expanded that operation to 1,200 chapters on colleges and universities around the country. Established students, medical students for life, law students for life, pregnant on campus. She's done a phenomenal amount. Jack mentioned David Bayride. Well, David had a colleague named Sean Carney. Sean was, as a freshman in college in Texas, co-ed happened to invite him and say, join me and let's pray in front of the Planned Parenthood facility. Well, Sean joined her, and one thing led to another. He joined with David Bayride, and the two of them established 40 Days for Life. David has moved on, and Sean is heading it right now. But in the time that they've had that organization, they've had over 5,000 campaigns in 44 countries, and have reportedly saved over 13,000 children. Lila Rose started in the pro-life movement at 15 years of age. She established Live Action at 15 to go out and do some undercover work to show what was really taking place at abortion centers. Well, she's continued that activity. It's expanded. Her videos have gotten great responses on the internet. It's reported that they've had over 80 million viewings on phenomenal, showing the realities of abortion. David DeLayden, at 18 years of age, ran one of the chapters for Lila Rose. After several years, he left, established Center for Medical Progress, did the same thing, undercover work at Planned Parenthood. He did a series of videos, some of which have been shown, others that are on the court order not to be shown. They're still being litigated because they're so damning against Planned Parenthood. They've led to congressional hearings, and many states, a number of states, having taken away their funding from the funding they gave to Planned Parenthood, stop that funding. just 18 years of age when he started. Another young lady here, Stephanie Gray. Stephanie Gray, when she was in college as a freshman, she joined the Pro-Life Club, gave her first pro-life talk, continued with that kind of activity. When she graduated college, she established the Canadian Center for Bioethical Reform. But at this point, she's given over 800 pro-life talks throughout the United States, Canada, several foreign countries. Google invited her out, and you can find one of her addresses on Google if you Google it. She's debated some of the biggest names in the abortion side. 18 years of age. She's now started a new ministry. Love conquers life. So it can be done, and these are wonderful people. Now your generation is the pro-life generation. That's what you're claiming. And you got the great skills. You've got the social networks. You developed you've been brought up literally with computers and cell phones and tablets and other electronic devices that are second nature to you. You probably tweet more than you write letters. Certainly you do that. You've got the networks, you've got the skill, you've got the enthusiasm. Show that you are the pro-life generation. You're claiming it, make it. Follow the millennials and surpass them. And this will happen. That's all the power of one. You know, one person can do it. You can't just say, I can't do it, I'm only one person. How can I change the world? Well, these folks did. These are folks that are changing the world. You can change the world. You know, it's, we've all seen probably a situation where you may go to a musical presentation, a lecture, some kind of other great activity where it was so profound and so moving that at the end of the performance, it was just total silence. And then somebody clapped. And then a second person began, and a third, and before you know it, there was a standing ovation because one person clapped. And that's what you can do. You can be that spark. You can get out there and start a fire. A forest fire is started by that first little spark. That's all it takes. The right one at the right place. Be involved. Have hope. But whatever you do, recognize that whatever your actions are, and as successful as they might seem, they won't be successful unless you combine it with prayer. Prayer is essential. Action and prayer. Combine the two. Because we're fighting evil. It's a fight against the devil. And when you're fighting a spiritual battle, prayer is essential. So make it so. That's why Mass is important. That's why the Eucharistic adoration is important. That's why the Rosary is important. That's why whatever prayers you find most efficacious for you, say them. I think to a large extent, one of the major pieces that we should be concerned about is the Rosary. It's a very special prayer that Catholics have developed. Now, with Mary at our side and the Rosary in our hand, what evil can we not conquer? What victories can we not achieve with that combination? I'd like to point out a very special image to you that I think is ideal for the pro-life movement, and that's Our Lady of Guadalupe. The picture that we have over here. In 1531, you probably know the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe, but in 1531, Our Lady appeared to a peasant, middle-aged peasant man on what now Mexico. At the time, clearly there were no countries, no borders. But she appeared to him on Tepeyac Hill in December of 1531 and asked him to have a church built, asked the bishop to have a church built. Well, the bishop wanted a sign. And so Our Lady gave him a sign. And on December the 12th of that year, he went in and opened his tilma. And that's what appeared, a picture of our Blessed Mother. It's special for a number of reasons. It's the only time, the only image we have of our Blessed Mother of the way she wanted us to appear, her to appear. It's her image. Now, if we look at the statues we see of Our Lady of Lourdes, of Our Lady of Knock, or Our Lady of Fatima, or Beirut, Rwanda, you name it. They're images of how other people describe the way the Blessed Mother looked to them. This is how the Blessed Mother showed herself and left her image for us. And it's more than just a picture. It's really what might be called a codex, a pictogram. It's a picture full of symbols, where the symbols relate back to Catholic teaching within an Aztec set of cultural pieces. First, as we look at it, one of the first things that comes to mind are the rays, the sun behind it. And if you go back to the book of Revelations and think of the statement, a great sign appeared in the sky, a lady clothed in the sun, the moon under her feet, the crown of 12 stars on her head. She was with child. Now, what is that? Well, it's arrayed in the sun. In Christian iconography, there are only two images of Our Lady where she has sort of the sunburst behind her, outside of Guadalupe now, but it's the Immaculate Conception and the Assumption. Now, is this one of them? Well, she appeared to Juan Diego for the first time on December the 9th. December the 9th is a feast day, the feast of the Holy Mother of the conception of the Holy Mother of God. So it's the Holy Mother's conception on December the 9th. That's still celebrated in the Eastern Church today. In the Roman Rite, that feast of the conception of the Holy Mother was moved to December the 8th, and we call it the Immaculate Conception. So there's very little doubt that really it is the Immaculate Conception that we have here, but the Mother of God. If you take a look at her image, looking at it with some of the Aztec cultural aspects to it, we find, first of all, her hair drapes down on both sides. It's very loose. That was worn by virgins, by unmarried women. When they were married, they fixed their hair up. So we know from the image that she wanted to appear as a virgin. At the same time, she had a little black sash around her, a cingulum. The black sash was worn by Aztec women to designate they were pregnant. So she's a virgin, and she was expecting. Under the black sash there on her gown, there's a series of floral designs, vines and various types of flowers. But there's only one flower, and you can't make it out, unfortunately, on this reproduction. You can't make it out very well, but there's one particular flower, and it only appears once on the image. The Aztecs refer to as Nahui Olan, or the flower of the sun. It has a transcendental meaning. It's a flower with 4 petals, tied together at the center, and that flower, the four petals reach out sort of in the four directions, encompass the earth. The center of the flower is where the Aztecs believe heaven and earth meet. And that flower happens to be right over her womb. So that's where heaven and earth meet, according to their tradition. This is one of the reasons that within a decade there were literally millions of Aztecs who converted to Catholicism, because they could see so much in this that was in their culture. Another piece that's very amazing that we can spend a huge amount of time on are the stars on her mantle. Now, in 1981, one of the scholars, and there's a whole group still studying it, and institutes just studying this image, but one of the scholars had an intuition. He said, I just wonder what would happen if we took a look at the star pattern on the time that this image appeared. And so we went to a colleague who was an astronomer, and they used a trick that's often used in planetariums. And they took the stars and they rolled it back to December the 12th, 1531. Now, the oldest documents that exist at the present time that talk about the meeting of Juan Diego with the bishop when he opened up his tilma, it occurred at about 6:45 in the morning. That's when the two met. So they rolled it back to 6:45 in the morning. They took a picture of the star pattern at that time, put it over the stars using these as registry points, and it didn't match. But then they flipped the image 180 degrees and put it over, and the stars on her mantle and the stars on that rollback did align. So what it was the star pattern over Tepeyac Hill, but not looking up into the sky, but looking down from heaven, down at Tepeyac Hill. Now, the most interesting part of it are not the stars here, but the stars that don't appear in this area. And so when they looked at the stars that were in that midsection, they found the constellation Coriona Borealis, the Great Northern Crown, a series of stars. It appears, the constellation appears right here, a series of stars, a crown of stars. The constellation Virgo, Virgo is Latin for virgin, appears right over her heart. The constellation Leo appears over her abdomen. Now, Leo is the Latin for lion, and the messianic term for our Lord is the Lion of Judah. The brightest star in the constellation Leo is Regulus. Regulus means little king, and that appears directly over that flower of the sun, directly over her womb. Amazing, just amazing. That's why it's really a great image for the pro-life movement. Our Lady, expecting our Lord at that point. So really, with Mary at our side, and think of the Blessed Virgin as Our Lady of Guadalupe. Think that she's with you, and she will be. But with her at your side, with a rosary in your hand, with saying the salutation, Hail Mary, we cannot lose. We will not lose. I applaud you. I thank you very much. I just wish you every success, and I wish you God's blessings as you go out on your 15 stops this coming week. Thank you so very much.
Yes, Larry.
and give these folks a rosary.
Oh, thank you.
Now, the rosary is a little unique in this case. It's a Knights of Columbus rosary, but the rosary on the medallion is Our Lady of Guadalupe. So if you don't mind taking it, maybe saying they're already blessed.
And after I say a few things, if you'd like to take some questions, we can certainly do that, Larry.
Sure.
Again, we're here at beautiful St. James Catholic Church in Charlestown, not Charleston, Charlestown, West Virginia. The most beautiful church in all of West Virginia. It's worth the trip here. And you all, when you come here, you not only see this magnificent church that could have been a cathedral anywhere else, you see the beautiful garden dedicated to Our Lady of Fatima, which was dedicated just a year ago on the anniversary of Our Lady's first apparition, the apparition of the sun in Fatima, Portugal, October 13th, 1917. And I just want to comment on something what Larry said, that we must be courageous. We must be that spark. We must be willing to take that first step. Because ultimately, the only person we need to please, to satisfy, is Almighty God. If our spouse, our brothers, our sisters, our children don't like it, well, what really matters is it pleasing to God? Remember this too. How does a standing ovation begin? It begins with a single person standing up and applauding. Don't be afraid to be that first person. Step out in courage, because we never stand alone, do we? God is always with us, and certainly the Blessed Mother is always with us. I also wanted to point out that this is the first of 5 talks, all of which will be on Facebook Live. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our second speaker will be State Senator, West Virginia State Senator, your state senator right here in Charlestown, Patricia Rucker, who's turning the legislature down in Charleston upside down with the courageous thing she's doing. She's a homeschooling mother of 5. We're proud to say that one of her sons, Ambrose, who's just completed his first year at Grayson College, is a member of our core team. We have about 24 on our core team. We'll go to all 4 stops, actually all 3 stops each day, showing what abortion really is. And that's what we need to do. If we're going to end abortion, we need to show America what abortion is. We need to be doing these face-to-face tours all over America. So those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, you can do it too. Just be in touch with us. We'll show you how to do it. It's not a big deal. Then on Tuesday, we'll have Dr. Monica Miller, who's the head of the Red Rose Rescue, teaches theology at a Catholic college outside of Detroit, the author of the wonderful book, Abandoned, The Untold Story of the Pro-Life Movement, a must-read for all serious pro-lifers. She'll be our speaker. All these talks this coming week will begin at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Time, excuse me. And then on Wednesday, former delegate Bob Marshall of Manassas, Virginia, who served 26 years in Richmond, probably the master strategist in the entire pro-life movement, will be our speaker. Again, 2 p.m. Wednesday. And then on Thursday at 2 p.m., we'll have my good friend Maura Sheridan, the president of Delaware Right to Life. She'll be talking about why it's important that we go out to state fairs, county fairs, parish fairs, and tell and show the pro-life message. And then on Friday at 2 p.m., we'll have Day Gardner, the former Miss Delaware, who will be speaking on what's happening inside the Trump White House, what good things are cooking there in the Trump White House pro-life wise. So thank you all for watching on Facebook Live. And now who has the first question for Larry? And Larry, would you please repeat the question? Yes.
Not so much a question, just a comment. Appreciate your thing about Mary. Also, at Christmas, I bring out, it's not original, I wish it was, I think it was from Charisma Magazine, said, what if Mary had an abortion? It's a haunting picture of an empty manger. It almost makes me cry. What if Mary had an abortion? And then secondly, Jesus said in Matthew 19:14, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, certainly do not kill them. Jesus said in Matthew 19:14, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." So that's a great pro-life from our Lord and Savior, who died on a cross for our sins, the big one of which is abortion. So I thank you for, also I have a law degree and I appreciate your great legal expertise on this. It says Congress shall make no law. See, Congress makes law. The Supreme Court does not make law. The courts interpret the law. When they interpret the law to change the law, abortion was illegal. When they interpret the law to change the law to make it legal, that's making law. What they did was unconstitutional. Roe v. Wade is unconstitutional. Obergefell is unconstitutional. Judges don't make law according to the Constitution. Only Congress can make laws. And that has been a huge brainwashing thing that's gone on and gotten the whole country to believe that they're the supreme law of the land. They don't make law. They did not make abortion legal across the United States. We did, by allowing it. And my third comment would be, the most haunting comment I've heard from a pro-choice activist was, if abortion was really murder, Christians would have stopped it by now. And I told that to my pastor, and he was like, he's right. Christians would have stopped it by now if it was really murder. He
Amen.
Really believes it's not murder because we have not utterly stopped it. And we have the power because we gave that to the Supreme Court, and they can't make law. They can only interpret law for a particular case. They can't make law like they've done. So I appreciate, and also the separation of church and state, like you said, that the purpose was to keep the state out of your church, not to keep your faith out of the public square. And as you mentioned, all that's been turned around. And the Establishment Clause was to apply to denominationalism only. The undergirding religion was understood to be Christianity. No other religions. Christianity was the undergirding religion. The idea was to keep Catholicism or Methodism or Episcopalian, a particular denomination of Christianity, from becoming a state religion. But all of that was turned around and used against us. So I really appreciate that you're...
No, it is. And there's so many things we could talk about on your wonderful comments. Certainly our Supreme Court has found all sorts of emanations and various mythical pieces that coming out of the law that they could interpret and then say, well, this is really what it means, or it extends over here. Not because it's there.
They violate the Separation of Powers
Sure
Act because they've stolen power from Congress, who makes the law, and they've convinced the American public that they make the supreme law of the land. It's an absolute figment of their imagination. A horrendous one.
I agree, and that's why the next appointment is a very key one.
Mm-hmm. But thank you for starting to educate people, and you're even talking about it is a miracle. Thank you very much.
Where's the next comment or question?
Yes.
I really enjoyed your talk. I thought it was very edifying. My question is, you mentioned a case in the beginning that involved, I don't remember the exact name of the Supreme Court case, but it was about, the school bus taking kids to Catholic schools, and how, the person said that you shouldn't use state money to, bring kids to a religious school. What would be your counter argument for that?
What would be the counter argument for allowing it? But again, it's really under the Constitution. It's the community itself providing money that for their own children. We're not teaching religion by simply taking a school bus and dropping them at a religious school or a Catholic school and so forth. And there's nothing that says that the government cannot provide funds for activities that have a religious overtone. They do it in a sense right now. You get a government scholarship that you can take to a Catholic school. There's government funding that's provided. So it is in other ways. It's again, it's that difference between the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. But it's you want to give people the option to do what they want. You're not forcing by that school bus to put people into a school and say, okay, everybody has to go. We're picking up all these children. We're going to take them to a denominational school. It happens to be Catholic or it happens to be Episcopalian, and everybody has to go. No, you're saying you go where you want. We're just helping you to get the education you want.
But they're funding secular humanism, and nobody says anything
That's
about it.
exactly right.
That is a religion with a set of
Oh, it
values of
is.
secular humanism, and so they've got us all trained to go, oh no, it's Catholic, it's this, it's that. I'm like, secular humanism, they're funding that all the time. Some public school buses take kids to be brainwashed into secular humanism,
Amen, sir.
For sure.
and we're not trained to stand up and say that's a religion,
No, it's
and taxpayers are paying for it.
sure, because it is. In a sense, I always think when I think of that, I think of the number system, and when the number 0 came in, it's a nothing, but it's a critical number. And secular humanism is not something that doesn't exist. It is. It is a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a way of putting people into a different mindset and teaching them a way to behave.
And it has a supreme being called man and no
Sure.
God.
Oh,
It has a
yes.
supreme being, it has a set of values, it has morality,
Mhm.
completely contradictory, and the state supports it 100%. It's been pushed to do that.
Oh yeah. No, we can. That's another good long topic to get into that, but it's one.
Where's the next question?
Yes.
I grew up in New Jersey. In fact, I remember the day that Kennedy was assassinated. We were picking up children at St. Pius Church School in 1963. So I'm just curious, when did this order to stop transporting parochial school children start? It was after 63?
No, it was before.
No, but
1947, you said.
But you said 1947, but I was on a school bus picking up children at St. Pius in 1963. In New Jersey, Montville Township to be exact.
Well,
That's where I
wonderful.
grew up. We did it every day. Stopped off St. Pius, picked up kids, dropped off kids, went on to Central School, public school, came back, picked up kids, St. Pius. So they must have been violating it.
They might have been
in
violating it,
Montville
but
Township, New Jersey,
well,
but we
New
did
Jersey,
it.
as you well know, and I lived in New Jersey for a while too,
Mhm.
but it's really a whole series of little.
Oh, I know. Every township has their own school board, which
Right,
I
right, they're
like, and
all-
which
all
West Virginia had
independent,
that. And every township had their own bus system,
Right,
so they could do.
they're
And you
totally
could,
independent.
and they also, but they worked with the other townships, like Lincoln Park kids would go to Booton High School, so Lincoln Park would bus their kids up there because Lincoln Park didn't have a high school, so they would cooperate with one another.
Mhm.
But yeah, I remember
that's great.
the day that Kennedy was assassinated, because the nuns were, that's how we found out, all the nuns are out there crying in the parking lot, the bus drivers asking, what happened, Kennedy's been assassinated. I remember that day, and I'll always remember that day. But we were picking up the kids all the time,
Tremendous.
you know, so I don't know, I just did.
Sometimes it's don't push it, and
I think
if
that's
no one
what they did.
challenged
There was
it,
a wink and a nod, and everybody said, we're
probably
just going to do it, yeah.
If no one challenged it, it was fine.
Where's the next question? No more
So
questions?
great.
Comments?
I do appreciate very much your willingness to be here, for the pro-life activism that you have, and again, I just wish you the very best. I implore God to bless you as you go around through these 15 stops. It's great work that you're doing.
Appreciate you.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Just a few closing comments. Again, we're here at beautiful St. James Catholic Church in Charlestown, not Charleston, Charlestown, West Virginia, up here in the Panhandle. Beautiful area and the most beautiful church you could ever imagine. It's worth the trip to see this beautiful church and visit the beautiful Fatima Prayer Garden, which we're about to go to recite the rosary and gird ourselves in prayer for the next 5 days of going out and fighting abortion. And just two more closing comments. Remember this, how does every journey begin? Every journey begins by a single person taking a single step. Be that single person to take that initial step. And also, for more information on Defend Life and for the great 5 more speakers coming up Monday through Friday, go to defendlife.org. All the information is there on our website. Again, all those talks will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So please tune in on Facebook Live And all these talks will be posted later on at defendlife.org. Thank you for being here. And thank you all good people here from St. James. You're all from St. James.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are.
Yep. West Virginians for life.
Oh,
I'm
that's
Lynn
good.
Hardy.